I've just watched episode 2 of Strange New Worlds, and Ad Astra per Aspera is a much better episode than the first episode, much more interesting. I do like the Star Trek Court episodes. Small problem, the end didn't make any sense, and it's the big problem with Star Trek doing prequels. Okay, so obviously we know, if you're a Trekkie, that we've explored this augmented person thing before. Dr. Bashir was genetically engineered, and they did a whole episode about that. That because of the violence, etc., following Khan and his war and genetically engineered humans trying to take over, genetically engineered augmented people within the Federation is illegal. Now, a lot of this episode tries to argue that actually genetic engineering is okay. And I'm like, I think that's a flawed argument to begin with. But then the argument, it basically shifts, and they basically say, look, it's not her fault she was augmented. She never asked for it. So, that makes it okay. And genetic engineering is a nuanced argument. I agree with that, because in some ways it's great. You can genetically engineer away many illnesses, but in other ways it's dangerous. When do you start genetically engineering because you prefer your child to have blue eyes and things like this? It goes complicated. But in this episode, they were a bit stuck. They wanted to do this episode, and you can argue that, okay, yes, it's about augmented, but they're really talking about any persecuted person, racism, sexism, the transgender argument, any persecuted people within our society. That's what they're trying to talk about. And I think the way number one spoke about her persecution was actually incredibly powerful and something we should all listen to. But on a technical point, because this episode couldn't actually resolve the genetic engineering issue, because it follows up in other episodes later in the timeline, they had to come up with this twist. Now, in the episode, it's has been so clever. The solicitors, the lawyers, been so clever. They got her, and they allowed the judges to confirm that she was granted asylum. And they said technically she requested it. Now, when you request asylum, you actually have to say the words, I request asylum, for one, which she didn't do. But she says, she implied it. So then they were able to grant it. Okay, fine. Why would her being granted asylum allow her to continue being a Starfleet officer? It would allow her to continue being part of the Federation and a Federation citizen. But the laws were very specific that you cannot join Starfleet if you're an augment. At the start of the episode, they were willing to let her be dishonorably discharged because she lied on the forms, etc., which again is illegal. It would be like joining the army here and lying on your form. It's a big deal, right? Saying you have some sort of medical condition or something and lying about it, that sort of thing. It's a big deal. But why? So they were willing to give her to stay within the Federation, become a Federation citizen, just not become Starfleet. This whole thing about them saying, well, we granted her asylum, it doesn't remove the fact that she still can't be in Starfleet. It's not relevant. The fact that she requested asylum isn't relevant to the case. And the Vulcan, in this case, would have been jumping up and down and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Very nice, lovely, very clever. Completely irrelevant. It's not relevant to the case at all that she has asylum. This is my problem with Star Trek at the moment. Because they're doing a prequel, their hands are tied in lots of ways. There's certain things they can't do. So they couldn't resolve this issue in this episode. They had to shoehorn this excuse in to do the story and to make the agenda stuff they wanted to talk about, which is Star Trek at its best when it's a bit woke. But then they do it in a way that doesn't make sense. And they're guilty of this over and over and over again. And the way around it, don't do prequels. Don't try to tell the same story again. Strange New Worlds is brilliant and I'm really enjoying it, but I really wish they'd put Captain Pike or Anson Mount on a starship in more, in like a Picard time frame where they could actually do stories where they don't have one hand tied behind their back because of all the other stories that followed it. But hey, at least they're trying to stick to canon now. I do feel like if this was early Discovery, they'd have just gone, yeah, we'll just ignore it. We'll just pretend that, it doesn't matter. So at least they are trying to follow canon. It's just maddening that all the way through the end of that episode, I'm feeling like it's ruined because, like I say, they shoehorn in this excuse that is irrelevant and doesn't really make sense. The solicitor then gets a round of applause at the end by the crew, and I'm like, yeah, all right, they've got number one back, brilliant, but that wasn't a legal argument. At least with like the Bashir episode, there was a legal argument and it made sense. And they were able to resolve the augment stuff to some level. This actually is an irrelevant episode in some ways because it didn't do anything other than number one's back and she's got asylum. Irrelevant. Guys, I'd love to know what you think about Ad Astra per Aspera episode, though, because I actually think it's a much better episode than the first episode. I didn't enjoy the first episode. I thought it was a bit silly. It was actually a bit boring. But I thought this episode was much, much better. But what did you think? Get into the comments and tell me. If you are new to the channel, like, subscribe, do all those things, and I'll see you next time.